There we go. All right. So week 3 of Codes of Transformation. This week is called The Psychology of Coaching. How to understand people so deeply that you can help anyone change. And whether or not you're a coach, whether or not you're a leader, whether or not you have a management position, whatever it is, I think it'll all chunk up to the fundamentals of just connection and experiencing a synergy with somebody else. And how do you help create more intention in that synergy so that both parties can feel success, whatever that means to you. And what I really appreciate about this coaching industry, and just to give you some of the lowdown of the coaching industry, a lot of it is smoke and mirrors, and a lot of it, it's outside the realm of like the licensing therapeutic model. You don't have to go to 12 years of college to be a coach. And I think that, there are some scammy coaching stuff out there. There is some stuff that will say like, I'll help you make $10,000 as a coach per month. It's all the smoke and mirrors of the industry. But I want to scratch through all those smoke and mirrors and just get back to the core concepts of change and transformation and helping people, whether you're just in a conversation with somebody, a friend, a family member, whoever it is. How do you leverage the moment in time? How do you leverage the meta communication that's happening in the moment to create some trajectory that has a positive spin? And here's, if you haven't met me before, if you're tuning into this webinar for the first time, hi, I've been a coach for 15 years of my life, so almost half of my life. And I'm so grateful for that. Number one, though, you will always be your first client. So there is that too. I mean, even through all the 15 years of coaching, I'm like, damn, I've been my client a lot, because you're always going to have the opportunity to, have that moment with yourself where you need to coach yourself through some stuff, especially if you're going through some stuff. And especially if you have these tools. I mean, I know a lot of people that go through the NLP Academy, it's like, it's not a regression, right? But sometimes you just like trip up and stumble and fall and you end up in a dark hole again. And you're like, how did I get here when I'm a certified NLP practitioner? I don't know, because you're human, because you're a person that's responding to environment and happenstance and life occurrences. So wherever you are, it's okay to meet yourself there. But that's the thing that's going to keep you going, is meeting yourself there. And that's the place that you need to start at. So the depth of understanding where you are or where someone else is the foundation for the transformation that you actually want to occur. Right now I work for Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi, and, out of all the coaches, just a humble brag moment, out of all the coaches that we have, they chose me to help them go through their next evolution of a company. So they're making me the head coach of something. And I'm really excited about that, because I feel so grateful that I've had this thing called coaching in my life. And the dynamics I want to talk about today, I think, have created that humility in my life so that I'm not leveraging myself as a guru that knows everything, because it's not about that. But you, as a coach or a human or a person that wants to create transformation, it's like a channel, right? It's like you're tuning in to something that is in the ether. You're tapping in to some kind of frequency that's in the ether that allows you to hold on to conversation and move it somewhere. So that's the goal of coaching, is like grab the conversation and adjust it accordingly. When people are speaking, they're revealing how they experience reality. So to have a coaching ear is to have that listening ear, that someone's not just talking. They're not just sharing words. They're literally sharing the way that they hold on to their subjective experience. And when you help somebody feel understood, when you help somebody create that safe space allows them to step into change. Especially if the person in front of you didn't have that upbringing. Like if you had parents that were kind of coaches and would give you, questions that would help create a catalyst for change, awesome. But a lot of people, they didn't have that. So they're just like raw dog in the world and just going out there and trying to live life. And so that's when this coaching industry came in. And NLP is really the original coaching model. When it was made in the 1970s, they would sit back and they would ask themselves, well, how is change possible? And how can we help leverage change within ourselves and with other people? So what coaching actually is a process of helping another person perform at their abilities, or even into more abilities. You know, it's like helping somebody tap into that greatest potential so they can believe it within themselves. Oh, what a relief. You're not here to fix people. And you can't fix people. If somebody's going through something, they ultimately need to decide to change. And that's, you know, for me, I love that part about coaching, because then you can take a step back when you give effort, and then you take a step back and say, you got to go do the effort, buddy, because that's what will help them navigate the change as well, is like the absolute assurance and belief in themselves. So how do you help motivate somebody in that moment so that they believe it in themselves? And then you take coaching out of the guru mindset, because you're not saying I am the person that has all the knowledge. What you are saying is I have a vessel within me that can help you move forward. So what does that mean? How do you do that? How do you coach? It's easy. You show up and you respond to what shows up. That's what I really get excited about. And, you know, I've given all these people certifications to become a coach, and I brought it down to that chunked up perspective of just down to the chunked up. I brought it to that moment of perspective of all you're doing is showing up for somebody and then responding to that. You can't fix people. We don't really need to give advice to people, because, you know, it's sometimes in one ear and out the other. And you're not there to motivate people, because motivation is internal within themselves. You can inspire them, because inspiration is external, motivation is internal. So you can help inspire them to motivate themselves. So coaching is tapping into somebody's internal model of the world without trying to control it. You are a channel, you're a catalyst, but you're not a controller. Oh, good. Oh, good. You don't have to fix people. You don't have to control them. All you do is get to help people feel understood. And most people feel misunderstood because their experience wasn't entered. So to be the best possible coach in the psychology of coaching is to hold space so that somebody can feel like their experience was entered. And you are tapping into their model of the world, and you are opening up their subjective experience and seeing it from that perspective. Oh, and that's so fun, because people they're beautiful. They're unique. They're creative. They're embodied. And people are also jaded and traumatized and messed up a little bit. And to help somebody rearrange a messed up world, it's really special. So if you've embarked on this idea of like being a coach, and if you held space for other people, like, pat yourself on the back, because what a beautiful empathetic gift you get to give someone else in the world, is to hold that space, to look into their eyes, to see the story-filled world that they live. Because the advice thing doesn't work. If you just point the finger at somebody, you know, when you're talking at somebody instead of talking with them, if you point the finger at somebody, the advice rarely creates change, because advice will assume that your map fits their territory. Advice will assume that your strategy works with their nervous system. And sometimes it does, but sometimes it doesn't. When advice fails, it's not because that person's resistant to the truth. No, it's because the advice doesn't necessarily fit their model of the world. So there's a flip of perspective that we take as a coach. Instead of talking at somebody, we talk like from them in a way. Advice will skip the understanding part, but coaching starts with the understanding part. And then it leads to the understanding part. I like the idea that you can't coach somebody through a world, or you can't advise someone through a world that you haven't tried stepping into. And so understanding someone, you don't need to become them, obviously, but you get to meet them in that space and time. So how do we do this with listening and hearing? And what are we trying to focus on when people are talking? Because they're not just talking, they're sharing their model of the world. Active listening is that perceptual skill where you're tracking how somebody is organizing their experience. You're listening for certain word choices that illuminate something that's happening within their world. You're listening for an emotional tone that they're speaking with. You're listening for certainty versus confusion. And certainty might not be, a positive spin. Some people are certain that they need to unalive themselves, but is that like a good certainty? No, but certainty is something you need to focus on, because even the most limiting beliefs will have the most certainty. And listening to where that energy within them, where that light within them either dwindles or illuminates, this is the active listening skill. People will emphasize and tell you what matters, but then sometimes they'll stay silent. Sometimes they avoid what feels unsafe or uncomfortable or hidden. Some things are unconscious. People will tell you exactly how to help them if you're listening at the right level. So when you get to wash away your biased perception, which is good for you, and then come into it from their model of the world. I like it. There's a word for that. It's like, how do I say this? Sometimes in the political world, when people are like, this is what needs to change, this needs to change, they're trying to change from the outside in. But I think in my biased perception, it's better to change from the inside out, because then you're changing from the core, not from pushing the core down and shoving it into a new place, but to change it from the embodiment of within. So how do you really listen when you're talking to somebody, whether it's in a coaching environment or just in a conversation with someone? How do you really listen? You be there. You be in the now. And everything happens, what we say, is under the umbrella of rapport. So if someone feels like you're really there with them, they're going to reveal the full lotus flower that they are. They're going to remove some of the mud so that you can see things more clearly. So when you're able to see the other person's reality, do you feel that compassion? And how can you present more open-minded curiosity to explore together how your client's model of the world created the problem that they're experiencing? And it might be something that happened to them that they didn't create, but the model of the world that they're experiencing, they definitely created. And you help them feel seen, heard, and understood. So let them talk. Oh, I love when you just get to let people talk and then ask them questions. So you let them talk, they'll vent, they're making new connections when they're talking, they're processing, when they're describing their understanding of the world, you're helping them model that and put it into their own words as well. And then when you talk, when you're coaching, you talk when you're asking questions. Or sometimes you need to talk to pattern interrupts because they're just looping. Maybe they're in old thought patterns that don't serve them. But I think that coaching is more about listening and someone processing, and then you putting these like really intentional questions in there. Because the key question you're asking yourself while you're holding that container of coaching, the key question you're asking yourself is, what's really going on here? That's beyond what they're saying. It's beyond what they're just talking about. And you want to ask yourself, are they experiencing this problem, this thing, because of a mindset, because of a understanding, or is it more of a strategy thing that they're really just not going about it the right way? And you don't actually have to do anything to help them resolve it. You can if you want, but the outcome is to help them have even more insight, because that's going to be the greatest change, is when they not only have the insight of the problem, they have the insight of the solution as well. Then they know it's from them. Then they know it's authentic to them, and they'll move forward with that. And the insight could be about what the problem is, or a new level of understanding that points to a different solution for them, or both, or neither. You're just responding to what shows up. And that's important, because remember, people aren't necessarily going to believe it when you say it, but they're going to believe it when they say it. So that's why coaching is holding space for somebody to unravel their own solution, because if they say their own solution, yeah, sure, you gave them 5 strategic questions to get there, and you knew that's how they were going to get to the solution. But when it comes out of their mouth, then they really believe it. Then they'll make the change. And then, it's not just about figuring it out. It's about the behavior and continuing forward with it. But with the coaching, it starts with that initial light to be within them, and you're holding space for that. What do you ask? What kind of questions? And this is where the NLP container comes in really nicely, is the way that NLP poses presuppositions. So presuppositions are linguistic assumptions. They are strategic ways of asking questions that helps hold the hand of somebody's unconscious mind into a certain direction. So if you say your question in just the right way, their mind will go that way instead of going that way, And the nature of the situation will change if you can ask good enough questions that get there. 75% of questions are usually about understanding their model of the world, so that they can also process it in understanding. And then 25% of questions as a coach are about challenging their model of the world and creating opportunities for something else, something different, another path that they could go on. So it's important not to just jump into solution mode from your perception. You want to inquire with the client until they're in resourceful states to declare their own solutions. And you might have to ask a lot of questions to get there, but sometimes that's what it is, because then the answer will be revealed within themselves. Questions reveal structure. Questions reveal how the nervous system is understanding their event, or their relationships, or their world, or their identity. Questions can help you expand that awareness even more. And I'll get into some specific questions as examples in a moment. We're just kind of like uncovering why it's an art, really. I love it because it's an art form of asking questions. And as a coach, and if you're a coach, you know that feeling. When you ask someone a question, they go, "That's a good question." You're like, "Yes," because you know it is, because you put some intention into the question. You want to expand just beyond the surface belief that they're having and go into the underlying mechanism that's creating the choice in their world. Is it a belief? Is it an emotion? Is it a story? Whatever it is. So the goal of a question is insight into their system and into the structure of how the nervous system is presenting it. So what do you ask? Well, here's some example questions. When someone gives a belief, I'm not a morning person, or my family has anger issues. One of the best questions to start to dig in a little bit deeper is, how do you know? How do you know? That question is what starts to unravel what's underneath the belief. How do you know is holding space for proof? Like, what's your proof? How do you know that's true? How do you know it's not true? How do you know that it only is true? Whatever way you're intentionally asking the question. And maybe you ask, how is this a problem for you? How is this a problem for you? You want to get more information out of it. It's like, remember the iceberg metaphor? If you've taken NLP, you have the surface structure, which is everything above the iceberg, but then you have all the deep structure, which is the stories, opinions, beliefs, experiences that have led to them just saying that thing that they say. I'm not a morning person, whatever it is. Maybe you're asking questions like, how big of a problem is this for you? Do you want to change? When does this happen? Where does this happen? You're trying to get more evaluative information from that belief that they output. With whom does it happen? How often is it a problem? You know, a question I really like when someone when they know they need to change, right? And I like only working, I say, with hungry clients, those people that are like, I know I need to change, but I just don't know how. Those are the best, because you're like, oh, now we just need to ask questions and you'll figure it out. What are you doing that you don't want to be doing? Or the opposite of that. What are you not doing that you do want to be doing? Because now we're getting into behavior. I think, there's different layers of problems. Some of them are more identity-based and more ethereal-based. And they're not really stuff that people think or do, or it's more how they be. But if you're asking somebody, if somebody's procrastinating or whatever it is, or they want to be more organized, whatever that is, you're asking, well, what are you not doing that you want to be doing to be more organized or to stop procrastinating? Because then you're getting into specific behaviors. And once you start to paint the picture of that specific behavior, then you start to paint the pathway to that behavior. What are you doing that you don't want to be doing? Well, those are usually pretty clear for somebody. If they have a self-sabotaging habit, it's usually what they're doing that they don't want to be doing. But then what? Once you have defined the problem, then you want to go into, well, what do you want? If you don't want to do this thing, what do you want instead? And how do you want to be different? I think that right there is the leverage point that starts to change the trajectory, because I think a lot of people, in my experience of coaching people, they know what they don't want. They know what they want to stop doing. But if the fixation has been on the problem, maybe it hasn't been so much on the solution. If you focus on the problem increases. But if you focus on the solution, the solution increases. And these are the things you listen to, especially from the NLP lens, because those are the neurolinguistics that are happening within their model of the world. If they're just telling themselves what they want to not be doing and not painting the picture of the new behavior, then that new behavior is not going to be there. They're not going to form any circuits in their thought pattern that will help create that new behavior, because they'll be very hyper focused on the bad behavior. And one of the worst and yet greatest things that I got to go through was being a binge eater for like a decade. But when the focus was on the fact that I was a binge eater, it made everything worse. And so the way that literally broke all of my brain patterns away from it was to not be that anymore, and now define the new part of me. And this, okay. This might be a hot take. I really like the perspective. There's a certain side where I worked in drug and alcohol rehab centers for about 6 years in my 20s as well. And I would teach growth, mindset development, and stuff like that. And I think that system, it doesn't work well for some people because they are hyper-focused on counting the days. I haven't drank alcohol in 476 days. And I had one friend that's like, I'm not going to count my days, because then I'm just counting till I mess up again. I don't want to be that person anymore. Why would I count the days of that old identity? It was such a good awakening. And there's one sobriety system that goes away from that kind of stuff. And I like that, because it's like, you're not counting the days of the old you anymore. You're just being the new version that you want to be. You just are stepping into that. And sometimes that takes time, but sometimes it can happen instantly when you just make a decision to stop being that old thing that you don't want to be doing. So what do you want? How do you want to be different? And start building the brain to go in that direction. But even if somebody knows what they want to be doing, why aren't they doing it? Well, then you ask, and this is a golden question, what prevents you? What prevents you? That question presupposes that something is in between the way of your client and what they want. And they'll be like, I don't know, maybe it's about my belief that I'm an addict or something like that, or I don't know, maybe I can't open myself up to love because I just feel all my heart walls. It might be that, I don't know. And people will be like, oh, this is what prevents me. They know what prevents them. Asking the question about what prevents you will help light up those neural wirings that's asking themselves, well, what is getting in the way of what I want? Why do I need a coach? Why do I need support and assistance with this? What a good question. What prevents you is. So to get leverage on the problem, to help people make that catalyst of change, here's some other example questions. I think, what's it costing you is a good one. Or what's it really costing you that you're doing this bad behavior or that you're not doing the desired outcome? When people are honest with themselves and drop into what it's costing them. Also, it's important to, help them hold space for that, because you don't want to just like, oh, if it's costing me, I might as well just go deeper. You want to help them change that, right? But the awareness of what's it really costing you and like what's your default future going to be if you don't change can be very confronting for somebody and also awakening. I have a co-trainer that I teach NLP with, and he had that moment that was like rock bottom. Well, what's your default future if you don't change? You're probably not gonna be here anymore. Something will happen to the greatest degree. And so why is it important for you to make this change so that's not your default future? But see how that question is, the intention of that question, like, why is it important for you to make this change? I'm presupposing that there is an importance for them to change their life. That's the beauty of coaching. That is the art of intentional question asking, because you're taking their unconscious mind and you're saying, hey, there's an importance here. Let's focus on it. Let's hone in here. When you're trying to understand the problem even more, that's when you're chunking down into the specifics. So where and when specifically does this happen? This thing that you do? What's it really about? How would you describe the problem in one sentence? How do you do that? Is this bringing you closer to your best or further from your best? These are all kind of questions that have an underlying presupposition in them that can encourage change, that can help somebody see more of the path forward. So now when you're thinking about the solution to get resources to solve the problem, you're asking questions like, when you think about the problem, what's not included that, if present, resolves it? When you think about the problem, what's not included in the problem that, if it was present, would resolve the problem? That's literally the question that gets people to their own solution within themselves. They're going to ask themselves that, and they're going to see what lights up that they need to fix, to do. And then within that, they're telling themselves, they're also affirming that if I do this thing, I won't have the problem anymore. Oh, super helpful. Super good. If this were happening right now to teach you something, what would that be? Oh, if this were happening right now to teach you something, what would that be? What would be the lesson? Okay, that's the lesson? Great. Well, now that you have your lesson, what would it be like to not need to do the thing anymore? What do you have to be good at in order to do the problem? I like that question. I use that question when people are just looping, and I've had like multiple client sessions in regards to the same thing. I'm like, what are you doing that you're good at here? Because some part of you is doing something that is good at the problem. So let's define that. And then let's move to the other side. What would it be like to overcome this problem? Help people see past. If you didn't have these problems, what will life look like? And I said will because that puts it into more positivity and more like assurance. What will life be like when you don't have this problem anymore? A little future pacing. And then, what's the next smallest step to get there? Now that you know that the other side is possible, that you can paint that future, but okay, what's the next step? Change will always happen within their frame and not yours. So how can you help create lasting change? And in order to do that, you need to meet them in their nervous system. Align the conversation to their values and respect their identity. When people are seen and when you're helping them unravel their problems, their defensiveness will release. They'll become more vulnerable. And if your questions presuppose enough possibility, they'll start to see that possibility as well. And they'll adopt into it. They'll believe in the change. And then the biggest goal of a coach is to help make that change become self-directed. I never want to be a coach that needs to do a weekly session with somebody for 3 years straight. That is not my style at all. And I don't know if I believe if that is a healthy coaching container. I think that is an enmeshed and enabling codependent container. So how can you create such a potent, powerful conversation and then be like, I'm going to let you go. You can come back every so often, but yeah, weekly coaching sessions. I wonder about those kind of things when they're long-term. Are you creating enough are you helping to create enough self-directed change within your client if that's what's happening? It was like when I was a fitness instructor, my favorite moments were if somebody comes and does the fitness class with me all the time, and then they go out of town, can they go to a hotel and go to the fitness room in the hotel and be completely okay? And if they can't, I didn't do a good job. If they can, I did a good job as a fitness coach because you're teaching them how to self-direct the change that they wish to see. And you can't just tell people to change. They change when they see themselves differently. This depth of understanding of conversation, connection, and human relation is, I would say, a good amount of intuition. I mean, there's like natural good learnings that you get from this, but I would say it's more so trained perception. It's more so making that decision within yourself of like, I'm going to now radiate this understanding of creating these transformational containers. And when I've made the decision to create the transformational container, now I want to embody the skill set. And that's where things like NLP slide right in, because you're working with how to hear beyond words. Because remember, it's not just the words, it's the world that they're living in that exude those words. You're asking questions in a certain way that help people reframe their reality. And how to guide change without force. Sometimes you need to let people fail. And I think that is really okay, because that's when they're ultimately going to pick themselves up. And if they don't, I mean, sometimes that's not your problem. So you're watching people make sense of their problems in a new way. And that's what separates advice givers from coaches, is because you're helping them seek the inside of the transformation that they truly want. And then you're creating really powerful moments for somebody to step into that belief. I think another thing just to mention here, that coaching can be quite easy. For me, it kind of narrows down to two big concepts. People want reassurance that they're doing a good job when they're trying, and they want permission to do the things that they want to do. So reassurance and permission, I think, are huge parts about coaching. And a lot of people, they just didn't receive that from their environment, their upbringing, whatever it is. Permission that they can go in the direction that they want to go, do a little ecology check that it's good for them, good for others, good for the universe. And then the reassurance, that's what coaching is about. And if you can understand people deeply, you can help anyone change, including yourself. And so in regards to all of this, in putting the frame back on yourself, I mean, even if you have the NLP, the certification, you've done the classes, you're still going to have moments where you're not perfect. Oh, what? Are you serious? Yeah, totally. Because you're human. And I don't know, there's just a lot in terms of the complexity of human consciousness, and especially what I see, the regurgitation of patterns from the past. I mean, I started doing NLP when I was 26. I'm 34, and I'm still like vomiting things that happened in my brain when I was 7. And I'm like, where is this coming from? Just because there is such a really unique complexity to consciousness, and it's going to be about continual change over time. But it's never too late. And you should never give up. But I'm hope motivated in human design. That's my motivation, is hope motivated. So I will always hold on because possibilities exist. And even if there is a trip up or a big trip up, it is never too late to, again, meet yourself where you're at, to hold space for your emotions, and then give yourself the gift of that underlying confidence and that underlying belief in yourself. You don't have to, whatever, but I really want to help inspire that belief in some people that they can do it. And you might as well, build yourself up instead of tear yourself down. Just saying. It's like, if that's a choice and that's your choice, build yourself up, tear yourself down. What one are you going to choose? It's up to you, but I would probably choose building yourself up, no matter what container you're in, no matter where you're at. And you always get to start at that moment. Even when I was going through, this is probably like 6 years now, once I started NLP, a lot of my binge eating just like went away from repatterning my brain. But it's like, even when I relapsed and binged again, there was a certain point where I was getting mad at myself. And then there was a certain point where I was like, this is not me. This is my old brain. And I'm now just holding space for my old brain to move through the processing. In fact, there was this one book that changed everything for me, and it was like Brain Over Binge. And it really took it into that concept, that took it out of the emotions and was like, hey, your brain is still playing out patterns, and it will change if you believe it too. So just wait a little bit more time, give yourself that patience, and give yourself that space and that grace, and things will change. This is why change, yes, it happens in an instance, and sometimes it just takes a little bit more time. So asking yourself, is there anything that you want to allow to unfold from within yourself right now that you forgot to remember is there, that you forgot to bring up? Is there anything that you need in this moment right now from your unconscious mind that can remind you how truly powerful you are and how truly capable you are of the change that you wish to see within yourself? And that same kind of inner cheerleader comes out if you're a coach or you're helping a friend. That same kind of belief. It's one of the NLP presuppositions that every person has the resources they need to succeed and achieve their desired outcome. Every person. Sometimes they're unfounded. Sometimes they're they're covered and you need to uncover them. but they're there. Oh, what a relief. And then continue leaning in to the spaces and the places that help you feel that same enthusiasm, that help you feel that same kind of container and possibility of change. It takes a village. You want to be around a village that is within that same catalyst. What was the quote I read earlier today? It was like, if you hang out in a barber shop enough, you're going to get a haircut. And I was like, that's funny. Yeah, totally. So just pick and choose the places that you're in to help create the container that you want. Okay. Well, I'm flying through this right now. If you have any questions, let me know. I can go ahead and go on a couple more spiels about coaching and how to understand people so deeply you can help anyone change. I think too, just hearing that right now, how to understand people. I love that humble space of like, you're never going to understand somebody fully. So stop trying and just start holding space for them to understand themselves fully, because that's what matters. And I think you can help anybody change. But again, it's that core part of they have to want to change. And, the first week I was talking about motivation and self-sabotage. And so if you need the replays of that, just reach out to me. I can send you the replays, because the inner loop that happens that is resisting the change. We went into that a lot because that's kind of the self-sabotage mechanism. But again, how you heal self-sabotage is through self-love, of course. Because even the behavior of self-sabotage itself is your unconscious trying to reach a certain value and a certain goal. So more opportunity there to be nice to yourself and reframe the way that you're experiencing some of your behaviors. And, with coaching, so for the past year and a half, as I've been working for Mastermind, a lot of the coaching has been about, like business building, because that's the way the system's set up there. But like, it still it ain't about business. That whole business entrepreneurship is literally a mirror that just shows you personal development. It's a huge self-development journey, really, building a business, because you're going to see you. And wherever you go, there you are. Helena, thanks for being here. Good to see you here. I think that until I am fixed, I can't help anyone else. Okay, that is really, I appreciate the fact that you said that right now. And I get it, because who am I? And I've worked with a lot of people that have come through the NLP Academy. They're like, well, how am I supposed to be a coach if I'm still dealing with my own problems? Because you're not coaching people on your problems. And I'm not saying that drug addicts should go out and be a coach and be like, I can help you with anything. I feel like, at some point you need to work on your own shit to a certain degree, and you can help people. But I was still coaching people when I was binge eating, because that didn't refrain my ability to help people. I was still just working through stuff myself. So I would say there is like a certain, what is it? It's a paradigm, but there's like a line where, you're fucked up till about here. And then you're like fucked up, but can help people. Yeah, it doesn't mean you need to be fixed forever. As long as you're like somewhat of a good human being, you can help people, because again, it's not about you. It's not about your problems. It's not about the stuff that you're going through. It's all about them. And you're helping ask questions so that they can solve their own stuff. But and even like, if I was binge eating, could I help other people with their eating relationship? Yeah, if I knew how to ask questions, because then that could even help you. And I don't know if gosh, yeah, what a belief to think that you're fixed forever. If you're fixed, then I don't know. You're done growing. And I think that life, there's always opportunities to grow. I think maybe that's the definition. That what do you need to be now to be fixed completely? And is that even possible? And again, we're like we're playing games that we can never win if we think we're always going to be fixed, because it's not fixed, isn't the place to like get to. It's working on where you're coming from. And if you think you come from being enough and perfect and human and whole, then you don't need to worry about fixing yourself. The identity of being whole and taking care of yourself, that will fix everything just naturally, because you're shifting the identity and the foundation of the way that you live. And you only need to be in first grade to teach kindergarten, right? So you don't need to be fully fixed. It is a good question though. Yeah. So hold space for yourself till you know that you've worked through some stuff. And Helena, I know you've worked through some stuff. Yeah. Compartmentalizing is the answer. Yeah, definitely. I mean, if I'm having a weird day within my own internal world, I just kind of shut that off and do this. In fact, right now, I mean, you should have seen me this week. It was not good. Something tried to take over my body this weekend, and I was sick, and it wasn't good. I did not feel well at all. And even today, I was like, man, I'm a little sweaty right now. You know, my body's just moving through something. But I get here, and I'm like, I'm not gonna feel that way right now. I'm gonna hold space for this conversation, and that stuff that actually helps me get better. Because yeah, it is compartmentalization, but not in a bad way, in an efficient way. So yeah, you can just compartmentalize your stuff and be able to hold space, because how you present yourself and who you show up as matters. I think that's something that people talk shit about the coaching industry too, because they're like, well, coaches aren't people that went through schooling to be a therapist to help other people. So, okay, so what? I literally know someone that went through 6 years of schooling to become a therapist, 800 hours of what do they call it? Internship. And then what did she do right after that? She took a bunch of pills and then took herself to rehab. So, I mean, it's not the schooling system either. It's not the schooling system. It's not the coaching program. It's literally the person. And that's why it's important to move through the smoke and mirrors in the coaching industry, because there are some bad, shitty coaches out there that shouldn't be coaching. But there's also like pure-hearted, amazing individuals that just didn't want to take the therapeutic route, that just didn't want to be behind the red tape of that industry, that just wants to be a vessel of transformation for somebody else. Whee! Okay. So if you have any questions, let me know. I am a huge fan of coaching, whether it was in, the fitness industry when I started, and then I started talking about personal development, self-development, did that for a bit. And then, about 10 years ago, I found NLP, and I was like, this seems legit. This seems good, because it gets into the dynamics of the way that we're thinking, the way that we're living, the way that we're speaking, and the fundamental belief that you can change no matter what you've been through, no matter how your parents treated you. It's all about understanding the structure of your nervous system. And in regards to coaching, it's about helping somebody understand the structure of their nervous system so that they can be the person that they wish to see. Yay. Okay. Well, if you have any questions about the NLP Academy, I've talked about it on the last 2 weeks, and we have one more week of this webinar. So if you've been attending every single week, and I see some of those names, I know you have. Thank you. This is really cool that you're here. I appreciate it. I've never done a webinar series like this, but I was like, dang, what do I want to do? I want to share more stuff. And I just want to get this stuff out there. I really love the transformation that comes alongside NLP, and I want to share it more. Oh, that's a good question, Helena. How much openness about personal stories do you recommend? What's coming to my mind right away, and I think this is supportive, it's share your scars, not your wounds. So if your question is in regards to how much openness about personal stories do you recommend, if you're coming from a coaching, if you're supposed to be the coach in the moment, share your scars, not your wounds. I have a disorganized attachment style. I had a dad that was emotionally unavailable, a mom that was emotionally unavailable, a family that made fun of me. Like, I got a lot of shit when it comes to intimate relationships. This is why I'm not a relationship coach, because I'm like, I can't do that, but I'll help you be confident in your own world. And I think, personal stories, share your scars, not your wounds. And not that you don't need to be vulnerable and you shouldn't be sharing what matters to you, but if you're taking a leadership role, suck it up. Like, if you are trying to be a leader in the moment, if you're trying to be a coach in the moment, if you're trying to help somebody else, don't share your sappy wounds and sappy stories. But anything that you might leverage in your personal experience to help somebody in the moment, absolutely. And I think you sharing personal stories shows how far you've come, and that can be very supportive and helpful. So it is a little bit of a slippery slope, depending upon what you're sharing, but personal stories are what's going to create connection and create the mirror neurons within each person's nervous system to light up a little bit more so that they do feel connected. Yeah, it is all dependent upon the moment. If it's a coaching conversation, like, does that personal story matter, or should you just focus more on that person? And oftentimes, so people do this in conversation. What they'll do is they'll share a personal story to relate to the other person. I get that. But is there, maybe if you're in a coaching scenario, could you be asking a question to dive deeper into their model of the world rather than sharing a story so that you resonate with their model of the world? Yeah. That's a really great question. And the answer is, it depends, like many answers. Any other questions? That's all good, Selena. Thanks for being here. You'll get the recording. Yeah, there's an ethical responsibility, I think, that comes along with things like NLP and, practice and the structure of the art of asking questions. And it's all about your ethical responsibility, your moral compass. But I always think, how can I be a container and a vessel of transformation in this moment for this person? And who do I need to show up as to be that? And I just go from there, right? Because remember, coaching, how do you coach? You show up and you respond to what shows up. That's it. Whee! Okay. I appreciate you so much. Oh yeah, if you have questions about the NLP Academy, you just go to NLPwillonlychangeeverything.com. We begin on January 17th. That's in 12 days. We're excited. We've got a global group, literally a bunch of people from the US. And then we have Ireland, Singapore, Australia, another Singapore. So I'm really grateful to be able to extend the codes of NLP worldwide so we can be the change that we wish to see in the world. Okay. Thank you for being you. I'm so glad you are. And I'll see you soon.